So equality. Yeah, that was nice while it lasted. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to my channel. Recently on Instagram, I posted 2 headlines that cover 2 different criminal cases that recently happened in Australia. One of the stories covers a Good Samaritan who stopped to help a young woman who was having car trouble. Only then afterwards, she claimed that he sexually assaulted her and she decided to press charges. Only to admit a year later, after going through the court system, that she made it all up. So she basically destroyed his life. Fight the patriarchy. The other story talks about a 21-year-old woman who went out for her birthday, got drunk, and then subsequently decided to assault a complete stranger with her stiletto heel. She was given a $250 fine, and no conviction was recorded. That makes me uncomfortable. But hey, this is Australia. Sometimes assault's illegal, other times it's not. Actually, you want to know what's funny about all of this? In Queensland, where the stiletto attack happened, you actually get a greater fine for not wearing a seatbelt in your car than apparently you do if you attack another person. Way to be consistent, Australia. So naturally, a lot of people were very unimpressed with both situations and their outcomes. And it raises the question, are men and women treated differently by the justice system? And the short answer to that is yes. Yes, they are. Even the young man who was attacked with the stiletto made the point that if the roles had been reversed and it was actually he who'd attacked another person, more than likely he would not have been given a slap on the wrist. Even his mum rightly points out that he could have ended up with serious brain injury, he could have lost an eye, or the situation itself could have escalated. So why was this girl given a $250 fine rather than being punished further? Because she was just exercising her right to fight against the patriarchy. Duh. Now, I'll say right off the bat that there are a lot of things that go into sentencing. A lot. This stuff is not straightforward at all. Each situation is different, each offender's history is different, apparently each person's chromosomes are different, and judges weigh all of these factors up when they're sentencing someone, because it's complicated. Bear in mind as well that when it comes to the justice system, it's actually illegal to treat men and women differently based on gender. As a result, this leaves a lot of people to conclude that the reason for the disparity in judicial treatment is because of police and judge discretion. That doesn't fill me with confidence. A major study into this topic from 2012 asserts that men on average receive prison sentences 60% longer than their female counterparts. And this assessment is more or less true from most of the research in this area, although I will say that the numbers and the disparity does change depending on the study itself, obviously. Female arrestees are also significantly likelier to avoid charges and convictions entirely, and twice as likely to avoid incarceration if convicted. Prior studies have reported much smaller sentence gaps because they've ignored the role of charging, plea bargaining, and sentencing fact-finding in producing sentences. Here, the researcher notes that other studies have looked at sentencing and other specific areas of this entire process rather than looking at the processes overall. Because there are many factors, like if you have a past history of attacking people with shoes, because once you clock, you can't stop. Now, generally across the board, men seem to commit more crime, they're more represented in the prison system, and it seems like they commit much more serious crime than women. Even in Australia, women only make up 8% of the total prison population. Yeah, that's because women can't be a threat. Only men can be dangerous. Don't you watch the news? I mean, yeah, it could be that, or it could be a vicious cycle where women are treated with greater leniency, and then there are less women in the prison system, and then judges see that, and then treat women with greater leniency, and then on and on it goes. Yes, hello, police department? There's a bigot here. So, looking at this issue from a purely statistical perspective, yeah. It seems like women are treated with greater leniency. You know how it goes. Go out, get drunk, stab someone in the head, get a fine, no big deal. Because equality. A 2015 study conducted in the United States looked at the outcomes of decisions that judges made at a defendant's first appearance hearing and during sentencing. The researchers concluded that women were 46% less likely than men to be held in jail prior to a trial. Women who were released on bond were given lower bond amounts. Their bond amounts were set at amounts that were 54% lower than what men were required to pay. And lastly, women were 58% less likely to be sentenced to prison. Bear in mind as well that this study did look at different areas and different kinds of offenses, including violent, drug, and property offenses. But it is a little bit unclear if they were doing an apples-to-apples comparison of their subjects. So, I don't know about all that. Other data that I found on this topic suggested that men, on average, have a prison sentence 18 months longer than their female counterparts. This apparent gender bias extended beyond penalties of imprisonment. One study found that male drink drivers generally receive fines that were 9.7% higher than those received by women for the same offense, and received disqualification periods that were 22.2% longer. I mean, to be fair here, that could be because men are terrifying to be in the car with sometimes. You know who I'm talking about. You who think it's perfectly fine to drive with your knees while you're trying to eat a burger. And I'm not saying this because I've had these experiences with my male friends. Say what you will, but when your life is in danger, it's not thrilling. Another 2010 study in South Australia that looked at high courts also determined that men are given longer sentences and harsher penalties for the same crime. They found that a man's criminal history was given more weight compared to that of a female's, and generally meant that they received a harsher sentence. Because equality! Something that I find pretty interesting about this entire topic is that some people have asserted that women actually get harsher sentences in particular areas compared to men, such as intimate partner violence. When a woman murders a partner, people suggest that she actually gets a much heavier, longer sentence than what a male would get. Equally as interesting is that people also bring up the fact that it seems like women are actually given shorter and lighter sentences when it comes to abusing minors or sexually assaulting young people, particularly when it's teachers who are sexually assaulting their male students. Even just researching this, I didn't really find any cases where a judge had actually thrown the book at a female offender. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, I'm perfectly sure that it does, but I just couldn't find any examples of it. No, so I was like telling him that he was just... So no, then I was like, don't irate me, you freaking pervert. So then I was like, ew, why are you even... Other people have rightly pointed out that even the terminology that we use surrounding these issues is actually vastly different to the way that we talk about men, particularly when it comes to articles that often go to extreme lengths to avoid using words like rape and instead use terms like forced sex, which is still rape. I guess by that reckoning, it means that rather than calling assault, what we really should be calling it is a hug from a stiletto. So why are women treated like this? And why is it, at least based on perception, that women are treated differently in the justice system? You guys are gonna hate this, and I'm sorry in advance. Roll the clip.
And also pragmatism comes to play in all this. When I was a DS or a DI, you raid a drugs house, you raid somewhere that's handling stolen goods, the man and woman are both involved. There's 2 kids there. Do you nick the woman? No, because social services won't come out. The bloke, and even the most hardened villain, will take the rap. And so the woman gets away with it, basically, but the bloke takes the rap. So pragmatism comes into play. And I just think, if we're going to have equal rights in everything, then you can't keep making these differentiations, because where's it stop?
Right, Sean Berry, I mean, equality is equality, unless apparently it means going to prison, in which case you want to be given different treatment, better treatment to men.
So the differences between men and women in terms of offending behaviour are actually incredibly stark. Only about 8% of women commit any kind of violent offence. Most women are being sentenced for things like persistent shoplifting, evading TV licences, fraud, often drugs offences to support someone else's habit as well. And these are not sentences, these are not crimes that make them a danger to society.
Well, they are crimes.
And sending people to prison,
But men go to prison for the same thing.
But especially sending women to prison, the impact of doing that, particularly for short sentences, can do far more harm.
Why is the impact on women any worse than the impact on men?
Women often have caring responsibilities, so in the process of doing that, those children are maybe going into care, that woman's maybe losing her home. The ripple effects into society are far more serious. Now, this is an evidence-based view, and it's a cross-party view.
Okay.
It's not just me saying that.
I'm not sure I follow. So fathers can be removed from the household for breaking the law because they're not important, but mums can't go to prison for breaking the law because they're mothers? What? What?
My point is not that, you deserved or didn't deserve that sentence. It's whether a woman and a man should be treated differently for the same offence.
And I still believe that women, again, like Sean said, but there's more to a woman going to prison. Like, a man could go to prison and the woman will be the one that brings the children to visit the man. Whereas if the woman is in prison, like Sean said, children do end up in a justice system, like in social service, which leads to more kids being in a system where they're actually more likely to commit crimes.
I won't lie here. If this is the prevailing perspective on this topic, I can see why things are not okay. I mean, let's just for a second here. Why on earth would you want to leave children with a criminal anyway? Even if they're just like a minor kind of criminal. Just like, oh yeah, fraud is fine. Just whatever. Kids can hang out with someone who's gonna steal your identity. It's whatever. As long as they're not burying people in the backyard, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, really, I'm thinking here that it's probably not great role modeling for kids to see their parent stealing things. Isn't this kind of one of those things that, like, perpetuates poverty and being a bit of a dropkick? No? Okay. Gee, that's weird, Sydney, because everything that you say is violence. Maybe you should be in prison. So when it comes to sentencing, many people believe that judges take into consideration gender roles and gender expectations. Part of this is called the chivalry hypothesis, and it basically talks about how judges might hand down a more lenient sentence because they perceive women generally as the caregiver, or the nurturing mother, or the mother figure that's stolen your identity. But generally, that seems to be why the women in the clips I just played are talking about the mothering role and children. Because it's 2019 and apparently no one needs a father. There's also a concept called the evil woman hypothesis, because feminists just had to go and make this about gender roles. The evil woman hypothesis argues that sentencing may be harsher for women who are committing crimes that are outside of their gender roles. So for example, if a woman commits a violent crime, like murder someone or stab someone in the head with a stiletto, then apparently they will be given a harsher sentence because women generally aren't considered violent. Petty theft, on the other hand, don't sweat it. We expect that from women. Personally, I don't think either of these concepts actually works in practice. I'm not sure how accurate they are, but now you guys know that they exist, so you're welcome. So putting that aside, when it comes to other factors in the justice system, it seems that women and men are actually just viewed differently. Many female offenders have a history of victimization and abuse, which is taken into account and given more weight more often than that of male offenders who commit similar offenses. Because equality. Incarcerated women typically have a history of unmet social, educational, health, and economic needs, in addition to a history of victimization. Many female offenders, like I said, have a history of sexual or physical abuse, and many researchers believe that these female offenders commit crimes out of necessity, whether that be to feed a drug habit, to escape a violent relationship, and so on and so forth. So apparently, this highlights that the needs of women in the criminal justice system are different from, greater than, and more complex than those of men. What? To be honest with you, when I started researching for this video, I wasn't really expecting to find borderline excuse making for female offending. And honestly, I don't really know if it's fair to say that women have more complex and greater needs than their male counterparts. I mean, honestly though, and just jokes aside for a second, when I make these videos, I do actually try to not insert too much of my opinion into just regular data because that's not useful. But I mean, in this case, and honestly, if this is actually the prevailing attitude, we're getting kind of really far away from equality here. Yay, equality. I mean, yes, the reality here is that women and men are different. I acknowledge that. Women and men offend differently for different reasons in different ways. Fine, I accept that. But something I really don't understand is how there can be such an aggressive push in society for equality and a total justification of the lack thereof when it comes to the justice system. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty used to hardcore feminists not making any sense, but this makes less sense than usual. Female offenders tend to be more marginalized and poor than male offenders. Like that matters. In 2008, the Australian Institute of Criminology reported 75% of women incarcerated were in receipt of welfare or government benefits 30 days prior to their arrest. This is why aliens won't talk to us. A lot of research into offending attempts to explain the behavior of criminals. And I know this because I have a degree in criminology. So I'm not saying here that I disagree with the data, and I definitely am not disagreeing with the fact that women and men offend for different reasons in different ways and so on. I'm just not sure if that's a good enough reason to treat women and men differently in the justice system. And hey, maybe it is. Maybe there's a necessity in this, and yes, maybe women deserve different treatment, but maybe they deserve the exact same treatment. What I will say, however, is that as long as there is this aggressive, hostile push for equality, in whatever ways and however that looks, then reasonably and logically, we would have to say that women and men should, and maybe even must, be treated exactly the same in the eyes of the law. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it also sort of depends on what the goal of the justice system is. Is the justice system there to punish? Is it there to deter? Is it there to rehabilitate? And I think that that is also a really important factor when it comes into giving sentences to people in this way. I guess at the end of the day, for me personally, it kind of seems really strange that there is this push for equality on one hand, and then on the other hand, it's almost like people are justifying the fact that in the criminal justice system, where there should be equality, there isn't any. So what do you guys think? Should the justice system treat people equally? Are they actually right to treat women differently to men? How should things go? As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe and the thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so, just be respectful about it. And I will see you guys next time.